Level 1. The renter. $1,400 a month. The pipe starts leaking on a Monday. By Friday, you've already emptied the bucket 11 times. Your landlord still hasn't replied. The lease says repairs are handled within a reasonable time frame. Nobody ever defined reasonable, so he gets to decide what it means, and apparently it means 3 weeks with a leaking pipe under your kitchen sink and a bucket you empty twice a day like it's a part-time job you never applied for. You text him a photo. He responds 2 days later with nothing but a thumbs up emoji. You don't know whether that means he's coming or just acknowledging that pipes in general sometimes leak. You've paid this man $16,800 over the past year. You've seen him fewer than 5 times. He owns your address, but none of your comfort. Somewhere around month 8, you start doing a different kind of math. Not, can I afford this? But what would it take to become the person on the other end of that thumbs up instead of the one waiting for it? The numbers never quite add up. The question just sits there quietly every time the pipe drips again. The first rule, renting isn't paying for shelter. It's paying someone else to decide how much your comfort is worth this month. Level 2, the first purchase. A condo, $210,000, $54,000 a year. You close on a Tuesday. You sign 11 documents you don't fully understand, and a mortgage you'll still be paying when you're nearly 60. The keys feel heavier than actual metal should feel. You walk into the empty condo before any furniture arrives and stand in the living room for 4 full minutes doing absolutely nothing. For the first time in your life, every wall around you belongs to you. So does every future problem hiding behind those walls. Then the water heater dies in month 3. You call a plumber yourself for the first time in your life and pay a $640 invoice from an account that had exactly $1,100 in it that morning. Nobody's coming to fix this but you. That sentence used to sound like freedom. Now it sounds a lot more like responsibility. The second rule, buying your first home doesn't remove the landlord from your life. It simply makes you the landlord and the tenant at the exact same time. Level 3, the accidental rental. Same condo, new city, $78,000 a year. A job relocates you before you're ready to sell, so you rent the condo out instead. It isn't part of some grand investment strategy. It's improvisation that slowly becomes permanent, the same way many real estate portfolios quietly begin. You find a tenant through a listing website, screen them poorly because you don't yet know what screening well actually looks like, and hand over the keys with equal parts relief and low-grade anxiety. The first phone call comes in month 2. The dishwasher is making a strange noise. You have absolutely no idea what that noise means, so you drive 90 minutes back to your old city just to listen to your former dishwasher grind while your tenant apologizes for a problem that isn't remotely her fault. On the drive home, you realize you've spent an entire day and nearly $180 on gas to solve a $40 issue. Not because it was difficult, because you didn't know a better way. The third rule, your first tenant doesn't teach you how to be a landlord. They teach you everything you still don't know. Level 4, the second property, $135,000 a year. 2 units now. This time you buy a duplex 3 hours away, deliberately. Not because you fell in love with the building, because the numbers finally made sense. Cash flow instead of appreciation. A lesson the first property quietly spent years teaching you. Before closing, you hire a property manager. It costs 9% of the monthly rent. It also saves you from ever driving 90 minutes to inspect another dishwasher. Something changes here that has nothing to do with real estate itself. You stop asking, would I want to live here? Instead, you start asking, what would someone else pay to live here? And what would it cost me to make that possible? One afternoon, you catch yourself calculating rough rental yields while loading groceries into your trunk. Nobody taught you to think this way. It simply became automatic. Almost like learning a second language without realizing when you became fluent. The fourth rule, the second property doesn't double your workload. It doubles your vocabulary, and vocabulary is what compounds first. Level 5, the portfolio begins. $210,000 a year, 5 units. You buy a small apartment building this time, 5 units. 1 seller, 1 closing. 1 signature replacing what would have once taken 5 completely separate deals. The tenants come with the building. You learn their names from a spreadsheet before you ever meet them in person. That feels strange for about a week. Then it quietly stops feeling strange at all. Your property manager calls. 1 tenant is 3 months behind on rent. You approve the eviction paperwork from your phone while standing in a grocery store checkout line between paying for your own groceries and replying to a text asking where everyone wants dinner. The entire decision takes less than 2 minutes. Years ago, back when you were emptying buckets under your kitchen sink, you imagined this exact moment would feel powerful. Instead, it mostly feels like paperwork. The fifth rule, the day your properties stop feeling like personal projects and start operating like a business, is the day real estate truly begins changing your life. Level 6, the specialization, $480,000 a year, 22 units across 3 properties. You've stopped buying whatever's available and started buying only what fits a specific formula, a particular unit mix, a particular neighborhood trajectory, a particular ratio of purchase price to projected rent that you can calculate in your head faster than your accountant can pull it up on a spreadsheet. You've built, without quite meaning to, an actual expertise, the kind that makes brokers call you first when something matching your criteria hits the market before it's publicly listed. A tenant calls your property manager at 2 a.m. about a burst pipe in a unit you own but have never personally seen. You find out about it the next morning in a routine summary email, filed alongside 11 other line items from that week. The version of you at level 1, bucket under the sink, would not recognize this version of you reading about a flood over coffee with mild detached interest. Neither reaction is wrong. They're just impossibly far apart, and the distance between them happens slowly enough that you never felt the gap opening in real time. The 6th rule, specialization doesn't mean doing more of the same thing. It means becoming the kind of person deals get offered to before anyone else even hears about them. Level 7, the team, $1.4 million a year, 61 units. You hire your first full-time employee, not a property manager you contract with, an actual person on your own payroll, a director of operations whose entire job is thinking about your buildings, so you increasingly don't have to. You realize somewhere in her first month that you've quietly become something you never set out to become, an employer in a business you started because you were tired of a landlord who wouldn't call you back. You review a quarterly financial summary instead of individual leases now. 61 units reduced to 4 pages. Occupancy rate, maintenance spend, net operating income, a handful of numbers standing in for 61 separate front doors, 61 separate lives happening behind them that you'll likely never personally witness. You sign off on the report in 11 minutes. You used to know every leaking pipe by name. Now you know the aggregate vacancy rate to 2 decimal places and couldn't tell you which building has the dishwasher problem this week, because there's always a dishwasher problem somewhere. And that's precisely the kind of noise a team exists to absorb before it ever reaches you. The 7th rule, the team you hire to protect your time from the business is the same team that quietly removes you from the business, one report at a time. Level 8, the syndication, $6 million net worth, 240 units through partial ownership. You stop buying entire properties by yourself. You start raising capital instead, bringing in investors, structuring deals where you find the property, manage the acquisition, and take a share of a much larger asset in exchange for doing the work nobody else at the table wants to do. You close on a 180-unit apartment complex with 14 other investors, none of whom will ever see the property in person, all of whom will see a quarterly distribution deposited automatically into an account they mostly forget exists between statements. Here's the part nobody tells you about this level. You've stopped being a landlord in any sense the word used to mean. You're something closer to a fund manager who happens to specialize in buildings instead of stocks. You attend a resident town hall at one property because a corporate liaison asked you to make an appearance, and you stand at the back of a room full of tenants whose leases you technically control and realize you don't recognize a single face in it, not because you've become cold, because the structure itself was built to make personal recognition unnecessary at this scale, and structures, once built, tend to get used exactly the way they were designed to be used. The 8th rule, syndication, doesn't make you a bigger landlord. It makes you something the word landlord was never actually built to describe. Level 9, the fund, $40 million net worth, over 900 units across 11 states. You've formalized what used to be informal, a real estate fund with your name quietly attached to the management company, institutional capital alongside individual investors, an acquisitions team that finds deals you'll approve or reject from a one-page summary without ever visiting the property in person before closing. You review 12 potential acquisitions in a single Tuesday afternoon meeting, greenlighting 3, passing on 9, each decision worth more than the entire condo you bought at level 2, made in roughly the time it used to take you to fix a leaking pipe yourself. A market downturn hits one region hard enough that occupancy drops sharply across 40 of your units. You learn about it not from a panicked tenant, not from a property manager's late-night call, but from a slide in a quarterly board deck presented by your CFO alongside contingency plans you approve with a single nod. The version of you standing in an empty condo at level 2, alone, listening to silence and feeling the weight of actual keys in your actual hand, would find this entire meeting almost unrecognizable as the same industry. The 9th rule, at this level you don't own real estate anymore in any way that resembles ownership as most people understand it. You own the machinery that owns real estate, and machinery, unlike buildings, doesn't call you about a leaking pipe. Level 10, the empire, $400 million net worth, thousands of units, commercial and residential holdings across 4 countries. Your name is on buildings you've genuinely never stood inside. Your holding company employs more people managing your property properties than most small towns employ managing their entire municipal infrastructure. Leasing teams, maintenance divisions, regional directors, a legal department that exists purely to handle the volume of disputes. An operation this size inevitably generates, none of which ever personally reach you unless something has gone catastrophically, structurally wrong. You attend a groundbreaking for a new development your company is building, a 500-unit complex that will eventually house thousands of people whose names you will never learn, whose leaking pipes you will never hear about, whose late-night maintenance calls will be answered by systems and people. So many organizational layers removed from you that the connection between the person who signed the check and the person who empties the bucket has been fully, permanently severed. You shake hands, smile for a photo, and drive away before the concrete has even been poured, already thinking about the next acquisition your team flagged that morning. The 10th rule: at the top of real estate wealth, you've traveled the entire distance from the person waiting for a landlord's thumbs-up text to the person whose company sent someone else's landlord that same thumbs-up text on your behalf. And somewhere in the thousands of doors between those two versions of yourself, the industry quietly stopped being about shelter at all and became something closer to weather, vast, structural, and largely invisible to the people living directly underneath it.